What is your name?
My name is Tom, and I'm a pastor at VantagePoint Church.
My name is Jay, and I am the young adult pastor here at VantagePoint Church.
I've been married to my beautiful wife for 30 years.
I've been a husband of actually nearly 5 years. On June 14th, we're celebrating our 5th year anniversary. And I have amazing kids, India and Leo, and we have another one on the way in about a month from today when you are watching this. So.
I have 4 amazing children and 4 incredible, beautiful grandchildren with 1 on the way. My heart broke when I saw the video of George Floyd's murder.
When I saw the video, I was sad, I was angry, I honestly really didn't have any words.
My heart's continuing to break as I've been watching peaceful, legitimate protests being hijacked by looters and rioters and the death of several police officers.
Since then, my heart has really continued to break for just the division within America, just the division within the church too, and just the brokenness and the lack of just being able to reconcile and hear one another.
I'm a retired law enforcement officer. I spent 21 years in the streets of LA fighting for justice.
I am a Black and Mexican man.
I'm a white man.
I'm worried about my safety. I'm worried about my kids' safety.
I'm worried about my country.
I tend to find myself worried about even the safety of some of my closest friends who are Black and some of my closest friends who are police officers.
I'm worried that what I think or say will be taken the wrong way by people that I really love. But I also believe that what unites us is so much more important and so much stronger than what divides us.
And that is because I follow Jesus.
I'm a follower of Jesus Christ.
All right.
You ready?
Yeah, here we go.
Hope
Here we
it
go.
goes well. All right, you want to pray?
Yeah.
For us? All right.
Yeah. God, we recognize the weight of this issue, but we recognize how big you are. And we recognize that we can't do anything good apart from you. God, would you season our words with truth, with grace? Would our ears be louder than our voice even in this time? And would you help us to discern what your heart is for this, God? Will we push away our own personal agendas and just have a kingdom agenda? And would our church and those engaging be able to see 2 completely different people, 2 people who look nothing alike, who come from non-similar backgrounds, who do different things even now, but would they see in those differences the beauty of your master plan in creating both of us? And would they see 2 people humbly coming together with thoughts and emotions and feelings, but ultimately that just want to love you and love one another in the process. So we love you, Jesus. We know you're in this space, but we just want to welcome you and just invite you into this conversation. In your name, amen.
Amen. Well, hey, Jay, I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here with you. I'm honored to be here with you. You are one of my favorite people in the world. Even before you started dating my daughter, I got to know you and I just got to love you. You are a man of God. You're just one of the greatest guys I know. So
Thank you.
I count you as a friend. You're also on staff at this church, and you are truly one of the staff members that just makes this church awesome, and you're just such a huge asset to our team. And then on top of that, we are related. You are my son.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not your biological dad,
Yeah,
of course, although I do know him. He's a good friend of mine.
That's a good man.
Jeff Stovall, he is a great man.
Yeah.
But you are married to my daughter, and you have given me 2 of my favorite people in the entire world. My grandkids, in fact, just about to have another one.
Yeah.
So, although I will say the picture that they put of half of my face and half of your face,
Yeah.
we do kind of look like
Yeah.
one person or very
probably
similar.
the hair.
So
It's
maybe
probably
it's
the
the hair.
hair.
Yeah, that was kind of eerie and weird. But anyways, I have so much respect for you, and I'm so glad that we're here talking about this. Now, we have had our own, when all this stuff's going on, we've had some of our own family stuff going on as well. Obviously with my dad passing away just a couple weeks ago, and all of that very suddenly, and it was a really hard thing for the entire family. And so we were dealing with all of that, and then 3 days after my dad passed away, George Floyd was killed by those Minneapolis police officers. And so we had a trip that we were scheduled to go on before my dad had his heart attack, and we thought, you know, with all this, we were still going to go as a family and go together to kind of mourn and to kind of process Grandpa's life. And we didn't even know all the stuff with George Floyd was going to be going on. And so I actually hadn't even seen the video of George Floyd or heard anything about it, because I was just kind of immersed in my own grief and my own world and trying to figure out all this stuff and help my mom and stuff. And so I hadn't watched the news or even looked at social media for a long time. And then I think it was the day that we were going up there, I first saw the video. And I remember we got to the house, and you got there, and then I just really wanted to talk to you about it, because I want to know how you were doing. And we don't talk a lot about racial things. We don't talk a lot about politics, you know. Those are harder conversations, and we just don't do that a lot.
Yeah.
And so, but I really want to talk with you about it. I don't know if you remember, we were both walking into the garage, and I was like, hey, Jay, man, I would love to talk to you about what's been going on with the George Floyd murder and just how you're doing and all that type of stuff. And I'm just curious, because we don't talk about this stuff a lot. I'm just curious how you felt when I said, hey, I want to talk to you about this.
I think, like, deep down, if I were being honest, I hoped that there would be a conversation, but, you know, it's like when we're originally going there, which was going to be a vacation, which then turned into just like being away to kind of just be together as a family, processing, you know, Grandpa's passing away, and just, you know, everything he meant to us, and just being there as a family. To this, it really didn't feel like, you know, vacation conversation, you know, but I remember it was Troy that had texted me and was like, because we had another conversation, and he was like, yeah, man, I would really like to, you know, talk about this. Like, we have time we're going to be together. And deep down, I really wanted to kind of respect where you were at in your own grieving process, knowing that, I know that I'm hurt right now, and I'm mad, and I'm frustrated, and I'm sad, but I just didn't know. I just didn't want to, you know, you're going through so much. I don't want to be like, hey, by the way, can we talk about this? Knowing how polarizing the sides tend to be, and me wanting to feel comfortable to express as a Black man just how I'm feeling and the pain and everything, without you feeling like you need to pick sides, that you can care for me, but you have an experience that, you know, by me raising my fears and feelings about things about like how I could be experienced or what I was going through, I didn't want that to devalue what you've done as a police officer. And I feel like the narrative right now is you're either for Black people or you're for the cops. And we don't have the luxury of living out that narrative, because we're family. And I'm thankful that we had it, that you asked me, and I'm thankful that even our church gets to, you know, it's still fresh for us. Like, it gets to be a part of us really processing this together. So, I'm thankful that we get to do it and continue doing this.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. And I'm, you know, I asked you then, and we were able to have some really good and you know, interesting and tough conversations. But even now, I mean, I'd love to even, you know, just ask you, how are you doing with all of this? How are you and Tiff doing with all of this? And honestly, like, there's people at our church who probably, like, you know, Jay's probably, you know, he lives a life just exactly like I do, so he probably feels about this exactly like I do, but that's not necessarily true. So I just, love to hear how you're processing all this and how you're feeling and doing.
Yeah. I feel like when we first initially talked about it, I was kind of like in the state of like lamenting, like, you see what happens, and like immediately I feel so sad for him as a human, as a person made in God's image, that he endured that and that his family is now enduring that. And I feel like, so when we first talked, I was just like, I don't really know what to feel. I just feel sad and frustrated. And then I think as I've slowly had more conversations, we've had conversations, Tiff and I have had conversations, like, I just feel drained. Yeah. Like, I think that's the best way I know how to put it. Like, I feel drained because I think times like these, it almost adds like validity to how hard it is to be Black in America, how hard it is to feel like you have to constantly try and prove to people that your experiences do happen and this is real, without, devaluing that police are good people. I've been drained. Like, it's caused tension in our marriage at times, like, which has been hard to navigate, because according to, a lot of the things that are said, it's, white silence is violence. Like, Tiff and I have had to wrestle with that, because she feels like, well, if I don't post, like, am I committing violence towards you? Like, am I, by me not saying anything, like, is that, and am I expecting her to say something? And at the end of it, it's like, no, because we're having conversations in our house, and I just want to be heard, and I want to be, loved in this moment. And we just had to battle the narratives of the world that honestly, if we followed them, they would destroy our marriage. Like, there's no other way around it. I don't want her to feel like she's picking between her dad and what he did and her husband and who I am.
Because you've said to me, a legitimate fear. And like, I know you, so I know you're not saying things to be outrageous. You're not saying things that you don't believe and saying things that don't come from your experience. And I know you don't have an agenda behind what you're saying. So when you say it, I listen to it, because that's the kind of guy you are, and I respect you. And so you've said, like, I feel afraid for my kids, or for myself, or for my friends, or whatever. And legitimately, you've said you feel afraid for your police officer friends too, so you're not just one-sided. But you really do feel a sense of fear that they might be stopped by a police officer, and that the fact that they're Black might count against them in a way that may even turn violent or deadly. Can you just, like, tell people like me who are like, why would you feel like that, where that comes from, or how that
I think
how you feel?
Yeah, it's hard, because I remember my dad having the talk with me, I think more people are understanding now with this whole thing what the talk is, and for the Black community and people of color, the talk is how you interact with officers. And my dad has never told me to disrespect an officer. He's always told me to show law enforcement the proper honor and respect, and you listen and you do what they ask, but it's like I'm taking an extra sense of caution and care in my movements and different things. And I think what's happened at times is the things that I feel like my dad has taught me, because he was doing it because he wanted just to protect me. And the things that my dad has taught me to protect me don't seem like they're working. And when I think about how am I going to talk to Leo, and how am I going to talk to Luca, and how they're going to be perceived because of, how they look and their skin tone. And then even just thinking about my life, like, there's just more on the line with having kids. And so I just think about, it just makes me hypersensitive about different things and where I go, and you know, it's like I don't want to live with the spirit of fear when it comes to these things. I don't want to be paralyzed by that. But it's hard because a lot of my experiences have like really just kind of left me feeling like I haven't been perceived the way God has like created me to like be. Like processing through announcing that we're gonna have another boy in this time has just been really, it's just, like I've had a lot of weight with that. It's like unique because like we waited such a long time to announce, and then everything happened with Grandpa, so it's like I'm very thankful. Like there's a part of me that's excited because, you know, we gave Luca Grandpa's, you know, name, and he has his middle name, and like I'm excited about the legacy that can continue there. But I'm also I'm nervous that legacy is gonna get cut short because of, you know, him being, you know, part black. Yeah, and I guess my question for you, you know, because you've been in law enforcement for, you know, 21 years, like how, like when you hear me share my fear towards certain things like that and towards police officers, knowing that you were an officer, I guess I'm curious, like how does that make you feel, like sitting in that, knowing, you know, you were an officer, and how do you think, you know, even, I know we have some incredible police officers at our church, like, you know, how do you think that makes them feel hearing this, I guess?
You know, I mean, maybe even to say, as a retired, I've been retired actually for 9 years now. I'm an old fart, so. But, you know, retiring to do that, from there to become a pastor full time. But just my experience as a police officer, LA County Sheriff, you know, so obviously a very multicultural place. I'm not dealing with, you know, any one type of race or culture for sure. And I spent almost all of my time out in patrol. So had a, you know, chance to literally have thousands and thousands of contacts and, you know, stopping cars and responding to people in help and crime and progress and stuff like that. I have a lot of experience, obviously. And so as I kind of going back, as I watched the video of George Floyd, when I say my heart broke, I mean my heart broke. Because first of all, if you're a human being, I don't care if you're white, black, cop, whatever, and you see somebody laying on the ground pleading for their life, and for no good reason, their life is being snuffed out by somebody. And even if there was a good reason, should break your heart. But when there's a pretty obvious, there's no good reason for it, it should break your heart. And you know, as a police officer, or retired police officer, as I watched that, my heart broke for George Floyd and for his family, because completely and utterly no reason for that. And my heart honestly broke for the police officers that I knew, because I just knew there is a special anger that burns in me and in all the cops that I know for cops like that. Because most of the cops that I worked with, they weren't like that. They weren't like that at all. They were like men and women who wanted to go and serve, and they put their lives on the line, and, you know, they signed up to do it, but they wanted to do it in a way that was reverent for human life. They wanted to do it in a way that would honor that their name and their badge, and that their kids could be proud of and their wives could be proud of. So when I say that I watched that, and I was so, I don't know if I can say this at church, but I was pissed when I watched that officer doing that. And I was pissed when I watched the officers around standing there. It was wrong from top to bottom, and it really upset me, because I knew what was going to happen. What always happens in a situation like that was that there was going to be this uprising over it, as there should be, because it's so unjust, you know? And in that process, I knew that there was going to be a lot of officers and there's a lot of guys, at our church or whatever, who are out there working right now. They're on 12s, they're putting their lives on the line, they're trying their best to do their jobs and keep protesters safe and not get in trouble themselves. But I saw something from Chris Rock today that said, like, saying that there's only a few bad cops that kill people unnecessarily is like saying there's only a few bad pilots that fly planes into the mountainside and kill it. So I do agree that police officers, we need to have such high standards of it's probably too easy to keep your job as a police officer, and I'm saying that as a police officer, for cops who do the wrong things, continuously or whatever, who because of unions and stuff like that, just civil service protection, keep their jobs. I mean, I'm thinking of all those things, but honestly, my heart goes out to George Floyd and his family and to the black community, because we can have a lot of discussions about, like, what are the steps that are necessary to fix these problems. And I really do believe that good people on both sides of that issue need to come together, because I think there's not just ultimate truth on one side or the other. So that's kind of my experience,
Totally. What I'm curious, like, your thoughts, because I think sometimes there is a lot of frustration in the black community, when something like this happens. I don't feel like specifically white Christians just mourn and call it injustice, but they are really quick to say, well, all cops aren't like that. And they kind of change the narrative to paint a picture of, well, all cops aren't bad, and well, this guy was a criminal. He was high. He did this in his life. And so I'm just wondering, like, from your perspective, like, why do you think there are some Christians specifically who are white that struggle with just being able to just see that and mourn and see that there's a person made in God's image who has been murdered and want to seek justice without needing to go to the other side so quick? If that makes sense.
No, I totally. And I think this is an issue that we need to wrestle with, because I think what's going on there, just my personal opinion, I'm not the expert, but my personal opinion, what's going on there is we as a people, human beings, are very, very quick to try to defend ourselves. And even at the expense of being empathetic to somebody else. And so, I've been there. I've done that to people. But what I've tried to, as I've gotten older and I've gotten maybe more wise, and I think I'm hopefully growing to be more like Christ, what I've tried to come to is less of that, less of always having to defend myself and make sure that make sure you know what I think, and make sure that I try to convince you of why you're wrong. And I just try to look at, like, what Jesus would do in that situation. And Jesus wasn't as worried about himself. I mean, perfect example in Philippians chapter 2, the Bible says that Jesus Christ, being in very nature God, having all the rights and privileges of God, didn't think that he needed to hold on to that. And he made himself a man for one reason, because he loved the people that he was going down to save. He didn't have to do it, and he was willing to let go of some of those things that he really deserved to come down to die for sinners, people who were his enemies. And then Paul says, you should have that same mind. And so when I look at a person like myself who might go, okay, yeah, you're saying this hurts you, but let me tell you all the reasons why this shouldn't hurt you. Instead of saying, this hurts you, and I'm here for you, and I want you to tell me, and I'm hurt because you're hurt, and I'm hurt because this is evil, and I'm hurt because we need to figure out how to, as Christians, to stop those things. I feel like not enough of us realize that, hey, what's called for in this moment is more mourning with people and empathy with people. People have a hard time stopping thinking about themselves for a second or what they think to be right, and just empathizing with people who are hurt, with people who are victimized, with people who feel injustice. And I think that's a real issue that the church is experiencing right now as we bicker and shoot words and stuff back and forth at each other. So since this has happened and with everything going on, what are some of the things that have really kind of discouraged you or frustrated you about the response to what's been going on?
Yeah, I think like there's a couple things, but one that comes to mind, and I kind of alluded to it, I think maybe earlier, but just the, I feel like this happens with a lot of times when black men are killed. We bring up their past as if it's a way to justify that life is now lost. And I've seen that. Like I recently was talking to a friend who was like, well, I don't understand. Like he did, he was high or he did all these things. And I'm like, well, what if it was me? You know me. Like, what if it was me? I have a track record. Like, my life has not been perfect. Like, I was arrested before, and you could dig deep into that, and I feel like it was unjust, and but it's happened, and I became a believer, but I didn't live in a way that reflected God a lot of times, and I have a track record. So if that was me, would you go to my track record, or would you just mourn with me? Or mourn with those who are going to be sad because I'm dead?
Right.
And it's like, especially as a Christian, we all have to remember, we all got track records. Like, we were all separated from God at some point, criminals from God, and God, being rich in mercy and grace, sent Jesus to die for every single person. And he died for all of our track records. So why can't we wish for that for other people? And I think that frustrates me when that is an opportunity for people to almost kind of justify that. And I think the other one is with the protests. Media, I think, is shaping the implicit bias of how we treat people and how we respond to people. And I'm gonna be honest, I even found myself, this week I had to tell Tiff I had to get off. And I had to be so deep in my word so that God would form my implicit bias, so that God would form how I see things. And I can even say, I don't think the way destructive riots and all those things are happening, I don't agree with that. I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. I don't want people's stores who they've been working for years to just be torn down. I hate that. I absolutely hate it. And it's a complex issue. I understand we wrestle with those things, but for me, I'm just there's a reason why it's happening. So rather than try and show that you value a property over a person, like you were talking about, understand why they're doing it. Talk to people more, ask questions, be a part of solutions. So, but on the flip side, I also know that there's people that protest that aren't going to do anything later on. And I want people to continue in action. I don't want people to do things for justice. I think justice is becoming a trend right now. I don't want people to pursue this as a trend. I want people to pursue this with their life. And so, sure, if you go to a protest, great, but what are you going to do out in the community? Because I think of people like my dad and his friends and my grandma and those people who have always been out in the community, and the countless lives that we'll never see that they have saved and that they have just steered towards a better purpose and towards, and as we know, Christ. And so I think one of the things I pray for is that even those who say, well, this, like myself, who say, yeah, I understand why they do it, but I also want to push forward. I don't want to just stay with, protesting and looting and riots. I want to move forward with this stuff.
And I mean, honestly, Jay, I think, from my experience, and this is what I've always believed, and I think this is true, that even the protesting, what is not fair is to lump protesters in with rioters and looters.
Totally.
And I think what's happening here, and what always tends to happen, again, in the LA riots when I worked them, I know that's what happened. And again, being in that community in South Central and having those people come up to me saying, thank you so much for protecting my business, for protecting my, these were African American people.
Yeah.
I mean, what's happening is people using this as an opportunity to promote an agenda that has nothing to do with George Floyd. It has nothing to do with making things right for black people. It has to do with their own agenda and stuff. And so I just feel like I understand your frustration.
Have you ever been called a racist?
Yes, I've been accused. I probably had 3 different...
Clarification, not from me.
No,
not from me.
You never have, man. I was called a racist. I had 3 complaints, I believe, as a deputy. One of them in particular that I remember so well, where a black female that I had contacted with said that I had called her the N-word, and that's not even in my vocabulary. Like, I would never even slip with that because I have never used that word. I just don't. That is not in my dad raised me way better than that. I just don't think of that. And so when she said it, fortunately my tape recorder was on and I was able to exonerate myself. But yeah, that's happened. But again, like, I was just kind of looked at that as, that's a sucky part of the job that I signed up for. But again, like, my experience was that I got along great with black people when I had contact with them, law-abiding citizens, because they were the people I was there to try to help, and those that I had to arrest or whatever we dealt with. But I always tried to deal with them in a very fair and thing. I was just thinking when you were talking about the Black Lives Matter, because one of the things that people will get kind of fired up about on both sides of this issue, and this might, I don't know, I might get hate mail for this one, but I'm just going to ask the question because I'd love to hear your response, is that this whole Black Lives Matter thing, because you'll have a lot of people and white people, say immediately when you use that term, they'll get defensive and go, what the heck? And so I'm curious what you would say to someone like me who might bristle against Black Lives Matter. Is there a difference between that sentiment and the organization? Can you kind of talk to me about like what?
Well, I just want to say, you may not be the only one who gets hate mail from this response. So
I know, right?
It's fine.
I know. Sorry, I asked the question.
I mean, I think, we're a people that don't like doing our research. We're people that like following, again, it's trendy, but we actually will show up to things and say things and we don't actually know the full context of why we say that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that the difference to me between the civil rights movement and what Martin Luther King did and the Black Lives Matter movement was the foundation was the church. With Martin Luther King, he had backing from the church, and because I feel like God's global church has failed to get ahead of this issue, we see something like a Black Lives Matter movement come to fruition. And I talked to plenty of my black friends who, are thankful that the Black Lives organization has started the narrative. But that doesn't necessarily mean we support how it operates. And I think it sometimes, at least with saying Black Lives Matter, I think sometimes people are honestly just petty, because I think people feel like they have to side, right? So by saying Black Lives Matter, they feel like they have to explain themselves to whoever's gonna be upset over here. But for me, I'm like, well, that's like, if it's that petty, side with the people who are hurting right now, and just say that their life matters. And if someone gets mad at you, just explain, hey, I've had to do, Black lives matter to me. My life matters. Every day I have to wake up and I live in a way that my life matters. But I don't have to necessarily, I believe in the sentiment. Just even explain that to someone. Sure. Just believe in the sentiment, and identify with those who are being oppressed. I think it's okay to say, man, I believe that Black lives really matter. Maybe add another word in there or something, Black lives do matter.
I really do. I love what you said, Jay, because obviously Black lives matter. They matter to Jesus. They should matter to us.
Yeah.
I think what you said, I really do think it has a lot to do with the organization, and if I say that, I'm sponsoring an organization that maybe doesn't have Christ-like values and stuff like that. But what you said was that, hey, what's really happened is the church has not carried the ball forward, and so we've kind of abdicated some area that the church needs to be the ones who are out there in front, leading social justice and leading what the world really needs, which isn't even social justice, it's God and Jesus Christ, and all the things that we want will flow from that. But we've kind of abdicated our responsibilities, and so these other organizations are filling that void. And I know your heart and my heart is that we as a church we wouldn't leave it to those outside groups who aren't really giving the biblical perspective of things. And we would begin to take back what should be ours, which is us as a church, loving Black people, loving the oppressed, loving and working and fighting and all that type of stuff.
Because I feel like,
so I hope that's where we're moving. I feel like it is.
Because I feel like when you read the story of the Bible, like we serve a God of justice. And so to think that Jesus and pursuing justice are even separate for some people, it's like, no, that's just that's what he did for us. What is your heartbeat for our church? What do you want our church to not just hear, but
for sure, because I'm a practical guy, man. I'm like, I always want to know, okay, what's my next step, you know? And so if I were able to, well, I guess I am talking to our church. Hopefully they're listening. I would just say, maybe 3 quick things, just to the broad church, because I hate I hate the black versus white, and first of all, there's so many different races in our church that aren't black or white, so they're probably all sitting there going, well, what about us? You don't care about us? I love our church because it is this beautiful mosaic, and like I said before, I want it to get more that way, because I believe that's the most perfect picture of what the church is supposed to be, what we will be when we get to heaven. And so I love us having to wrestle with these things because there's a bunch of us around, and we need to wrestle with it and love each other. So what I would say to the church at large, and this goes to both sides or just to all of you, my encouragement to you, I was reading in Ecclesiastes the other day, the writer of Ecclesiastes, Solomon, was talking about how a wise man watches his words, and how even a fool, when he's silent, seems like he's wise. And I think, especially in our culture and stuff, it's so, with the social media, it's so, everybody wants to get it out there and like and share and put your thing out there and make sure that everybody knows the way you feel and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just would encourage them. Ecclesiastes says this, it says, God is in heaven, you are on earth, therefore let your words be few. We need to be more loving to each other. If somebody doesn't agree with you, so what? You can still, I'm not saying don't stand up for your beliefs, but I'm simply saying think about the words, maybe use a few less, maybe be a little more kind to each other when you do, and maybe even be accepting to someone who doesn't think exactly like you do or look exactly like you do. To my black brothers and sisters, it's the same thing I'd say to you, man. I love you. I value you. I celebrate the fact that you are my friend. You are created in the image of God. You are as equal to anyone on this earth. You are beautiful, and you're in a moment where you're hurting right now, and I want to hurt with you. I want to mourn with you. I want to hear you. I want to go out of my way to have conversations with you and let you tell me what you think. We don't have to see everything this eye to eye, and I still love you. We don't have to see all the answers the same. I choose to listen to you and to mourn with you, and I love you. And that's what I'd like you guys to know. And maybe anybody else. I just want to say, again, like I already said it, so it'll be really quick, but just in this moment, you will go further, even with what you believe is right, if you will humble yourself and just listen to people and approach them humbly and say, I want to hear what you have to say. I want to get to know you. I'm hurting with you. Tell me how I can help. God, you can't be a Christian, a follower of Jesus, and have hate in your heart.
Yeah.
You cannot.
Yeah, I've heard it said that proximity breeds compassion. Like how close you live. Yeah, proximity.
Yeah.
But distance just breeds disconnect.
Absolutely.
And questioning. And so I would even say to our church, like, man, it's hard because like we actually can't like really be in proximity with each other.
Yeah.
But our hearts can.
Yeah.
And we can do that in a way that just it just shows how much we care, like you said. And I was thinking, I heard this story, and I want to just end this, and I don't think I've actually even shared this story with you, but it's a story that I heard of a king, and the king was looking for his next heir to his throne, and so he got the 10 boys in his village. And he gave these boys all a seed. He brought them in. He said, I'm going to find the heir to the throne. And I want you to take this seed, and I want you to care for it. I want you to water it. I want you to just be faithful to this seed and seeing like the actual tree sprout from it. Yeah. And he sends them off. And out of these 10 boys, the story goes to this one who, when it's time to come back, he has been faithful to it. He had put it out in the sun, and he had put water to it like by the clock. He had cared for it. And 2 months had passed, and they come back, and he doesn't have anything produced, and he's feeling embarrassed. He's feeling like, man, what's going on? And he feels ashamed when he comes back, and he sees the other 9 with these beautiful like sunflowers and like daisies, and he's like, what did I do wrong? Like, what did I do? Like, how did they get that and I have this? And so the king asked all the 9 men, said, hey, how did you guys produce this? And they say, oh, well, I watered this and I did that and I kept on this schedule and I did this many times. And then he gets to the one who doesn't have anything, and the one tells him, well, I'm gonna be honest, king, like I tried to take care of it. I watered it. I tried to be as faithful as I could. And like, I'm just sorry, this is what I have. And he said, you're gonna be the heir to my throne. And he said, for the seed that I gave you all, it doesn't produce a plant until after a year. And so all these people had brought things because, again, they were trying to look good before the king. And our world loves speed. Our world loves looking like we've done something. Yeah. And what I would say to our church is 2 Corinthians 5, God has given us a ministry of reconciliation. Reconciliation means that we take broken and fractured things and we try to mend them together for the sake of harmony and fellowship. But that takes time. Yeah. Ephesians 4 says that we are to make every effort for the sake and bond of unity and peace. Yeah. And it's going to take us doing things that are not going to be seen on social media, that we're not going to see the fruit of it until after a year or years. But we can't fall in love or be tempted by all the things that we see online and think that that is going to be the way. Because when we get out of quarantine and when we get into our real lives, that is going to be the time where I think God is looking at us to say, are you going to be faithful to continue to pursue justice for people who feel oppressed, to continue to be in proximity with people who are different than you, to love them? Like, God has given us this ministry of reconciliation. At the end of my life, I don't want God to say, well done, good and faithful tweeter. Well done, good and faithful Instagram poster. Like, I know I do those things. I'm not saying those things are bad, but what I'm saying is we can't do them for the sake of wanting to be seen in these lights and not produce and maintain to be faithful to them later on. Because reconciliation fixes things. Yeah. It just does, and that's because God showed that for us. And so I would love for VantagePoint Church to be a church that are not just activists, because activists, they pursue social justice and they pursue to make things right. But what our world is showing us is there's a lot of activists that are leading people to anger. And there's a righteous anger that tells us not to sin. But what I'm feeling the tension is people are being led to be activists and to stay in their anger, to stay divided. Yeah. But God is saying, okay, you're going to be angry, don't sin, but I'm giving you this ministry of reconciliation so that you can make things right. I want our church to be the church that is not just known for how we had this one conversation and then we went and we said, God, look at the sunflower that we produced. But no, we actually, we worked and we got out of quarantine and we were willing to even reconcile relationships within our church, with each other, differences of opinions, and in our communities. I want us to be ministers of reconciliation and making every effort to have peace. And so that's my prayer. That's what I want to be known for. I don't want to be known for what I post. I want to be known for how I lived and how consistent I did.
That's amazing. I hope that for VantagePoint Church too. So
yeah, thank you for having this conversation.
Absolutely. I love you, man.
I love you too.
All right.